Hello, beer digesters. Tonight, the taste on our tongues is Still Waters Ghost Gone Wild, which is remix slash sort of collaboration with Westbrook Brewing. Westbrook is popular for their Gosa, which is very intensely sour and very nice. And I guess what they did, they say they did with this one, is this beer started as a Westbrook Gosa, and then they hop it a lot with Citra and Amarillo hops, and ferment it with various strains of Brettanomyces. So it has lots of things I love, and lots of things that are pretty popular these days in beer. That's sour beers, hoppy beers, and funky beers like Brettanomyces. It's not totally clear if it's fermented completely with the Brettanomyces. They say it starts its life as Westbrook Gosa, which I think is fermented with a neutral ale yeast strain. Like most Gosas are, you don't get much yeast flavor. And they don't mention the use of coriander or salt, but if it's going to be anything like a Westbrook Gosa, it's got to be pretty salty, coriandery, and very sour. So we will see how it is. And this one I just picked up, I just saw it for the first time in the New England area, so I think it's probably pretty fresh. Not ridiculously so, I'm guessing, but no more than, a month or two, I think. And this one actually was on the shelves next to their Money Tree, which is a similar beer, but they call that actually a session IPA Gosa. This one they don't describe as an IPA. I think it's like somewhat hoppy, but then Brettanomyces-y. But with these lower alcohol fresh beers that I assume they don't age with the Brettanomyces, they tend to not get as much funky character. I'm sure you could age this and it would get funkier, but then you would lose the fresh, juicy hoppiness. But I don't really know what to expect in this beer at all. So Stillwater does a lot of cool, unexpected collaborations. And this is super pale, with some haze, but pouring very nicely for a sour beer. Ooh, lots and lots of carbonation. But real pale straw with a good amount of haze. Ooh, I'm smelling the Brettanomyces though. Ooh, that is nice. Wow, this is very interesting. Wow, the Brettanomyces kind of funk, hay, mushroom, but also juicy tropical fruit is mixing with the fruitiness and funkiness of the hops a little bit and the resinous character, but then the slightly sour, salty part is blending all together really nicely. It smells, a little weird, a little like sweat and lemonade or something, with some resinous, weedy, citrusy qualities too. But then just a touch of like pineapple, a lot of lemon, especially grapefruit. Grapefruit is a big aroma, like some nice kind of dank grapefruit. But then a little bit of hay. And so yeah, definitely some pineapple. Very complex nose. And the head dropped down a little bit, but it's sticking around with a little ring there, because with Brettanomyces beers, they can get real carbonated and get big rocky heads, and then when you add hops to that, it can help the head to stick around, but if it's really sour, that's usually going to die down. So this actually almost has the look of somewhat like a hazy Goza, not a Gosa, but a Goza, the Belgian blend of lambic beers. And the smell is up there with complexity and funkiness. But it's a little challenging. I would have to say that much. Putting all this together, but the grassy resin grapefruit with a little bit of a pineapple tropical like farm smell is just very nice to me, and it almost smells like it has been aged in oak, but it has not. Maybe just a tad of something that's like vanilla even. Mm. Whew. Sour. I noticed the coriander, definitely. And resinous, citrusy. Ooh, yeah, that is. There's a lot going on in this beer, basically. Mm. There's not too much of that bitter, chalky aspirin finish and quality that I get from a lot of Brettanomyces beers. A little bit. It's got a little bit of a dry, resiny hops, a little bit white peppery. But it's not too bitter. I think it's good that they didn't turn this into something like an IPA and try to add a lot of bitterness from the hops, because there's plenty of sourness that's drawing it out, along with the Brettanomyces chalkiness. This is a lot of fun. It's got a little bit of that kind of weird, funky. It's hard to describe it. I like to use words like urine and diaper. They don't really express the experience I'm having very well, though, I don't think. Because it's not quite like, I haven't licked a gross diaper or drunk urine, but maybe sweat is a better description, but it's got a lambic sort of intense funkiness to it. Especially once I had a sip of it, it's kind of filled in my face. That I think has to do with the combination of lactic acid from the Gose quality to it and the Brettanomyces that is very, very nice. Yeah, I'm smelling that more now. And the hops are there, but they're, on a side note, it's not taking over. Because I've noticed with these dry hop sours and funky beers that sometimes they do a heavy hand with the hops and it's mostly IPA, sometimes they don't use enough, and it's like, it's just vegetal, kind of boring hops. And this one incorporates all the bizarre elements into something really special. A little bit of a juicy fruit Belgian-y thing going on from the Brettanomyces, and they say they used multiple strains, and I think that's why it's got such a intense complexity and so many different flavors. Yeah, definitely juicy fruit, not quite bubblegum. Maybe a hint of bubblegum, but more like just juicy fruit gum in general, let's say. And it's got pretty good carbonation still. Only a little bit of burn in the back of my throat from the sourness. I got used to it pretty quickly, but I had not had anything sour yet today. So the first sip was a little intense. Now it's more palatable. The coriander is much stronger in the flavor than the aroma, which is kind of odd to me. It's very fruity, tart, citrusy, grapefruity. Not quite getting a passion fruit, but more of a pineapple, like unripe mango maybe, but it's not super juicy. But then the flavor, I get that strong coriander spice. It's almost like the coriander helps bring out the citra hops a little bit in the aroma, but then you drink it and the coriander is stronger. Because coriander and citra actually, when you ferment a beer with them inside the beer, it creates a similar fruity, citrusy compound, which is why I think it's hard to differentiate the flavors in this beer, but it's also a lot of fun to try it out. Amazing, there's so much going on in this beer, and it is 4.3% alcohol. And I find it to be quite a bit more palatable in the Westbrook Gose. That one is just kind of all sour, in your face. This has a lot of other things that are happening and help almost to mellow out the sourness, maybe. And I think this is definitely worth it. It's like $10 a bottle for this for 22 ounces, and you might be like, ugh, low alcohol beer, not oak aged. That's expensive, but it's a really special beer. There is nothing I've ever had quite like this. And a lot of times when I see a beer, it's like, oh, using all these different ingredients and yeast and things that I love, they put them together. It doesn't work out. This works out a lot. But you have to love all these ingredients a lot to enjoy it. It's not gonna be. Just don't give this to anyone who hasn't had a sour beer, who hasn't had a Brettanomyces beer. I mean, maybe they'll like it. If you give this to someone who doesn't like hops, don't tell them that there are hops in it, and they might not notice it. It's all of the different flavors are kind of morphed and squished around by the brewing process, that it messes with your head a little bit. It'd be confusing if you gave this to me. I don't know what it was. Because I didn't even mention like the salt that's happening. Like I have a little bit of minerality, not too much salt. Definitely in there. And I definitely can tell it's a wheat beer. There's a little bit of a wheat crackery malt, but it's all about the hops and the yeast and the sourness in this beer. It isn't totally perfect, but it's really nice, and I'm glad that I got my hands on this beer because there were only 2 bottles left at this shop where I was at, and I think they sold out in less than a week, basically. So it's one of the hot commodities that you should get and enrich. Like the sourness and the Brettanomyces chalkiness, and I'm getting a little bit of resin from the hops now on my tongue. Dries it out perfectly, but it's not too much. It's not like I have that overly textured, scraping cat tongue. It's very nice. And the name is just too good. Gose Gone Wild. And there's all these different Goses with silly names, and some of them are good, some aren't that great, and they're just all stupid names. But this one might take the cake when it comes to the experimental Goses. I'm going to give it a 9. 9 out of 10. Thank you, Stillwater, and your mastery of Brett. Good night.